What's up guys, and welcome back to the channel. If you've been following this Yamaha Raptor 660 rebuild, you already know this quad and engine has fought me every step of the way. In the last episode, we rebuilt the transmission, installed the correct crankshaft, and finally sealed the engine cases. And today, we're finishing the entire bottom end, and by the end of this video, this engine will finally start looking like an engine again. But that's enough talking, let's get into it. Alright guys, so we will first start by installing the shift star. We can tighten it down with a special bolt, and this special bolt has a post on top of it. There's the recession on the back of the shift star, and this recession lines up with the pin on the shift drum. Now that the shift star is into place, we will use some blue Loctite and then we will tighten it down. Once it's hand tight, we can torque it down using a 12mm socket to around 22 foot-pounds or 29 Nm. The torque wrench I was using only actually goes up to 25 Nm on the scale, so I upped it a little bit. Next up are the shift balls. First we need to install the springs and pushers, and after that we can insert the shift balls. Make sure to align the rounded edges onto the part where we install them in. After that we can slide the full assembly onto the post we just installed. Once that's into place, we can install the top hat on the remaining empty pin. Now that we have finished that part, we can move on to the shift guide plate. We can just slide it into place and then we can tighten it down to 8 foot-pounds or 10 Nm. After that, it's time to install the shift detent. We will put the special washer with a small portion facing upwards on top of the bolt hole. After that, we can slide the shift detent over that washer and then we can put the bolt through and torque it down to 8 foot-pounds or 10 Nm. Once torqued, we can install the spring. Now we can install the main shift shaft. This part consists of a spring, a spacer and a shimmering. I've put the shimmering into place in advance and then I can install the shift shaft. Make sure to loop this up because this part needs to move freely, and there will also be a seal on the other side of the shift shaft. It's important that the shift shaft plate should slide over the post as well as over the top hat. Next up is the speed sensor gear. We will start by installing a snap ring in the lower groove, since there's 2 of them. And after that we can slide the gear into place, which will be aligned by a keyhole. Once that's fitted, we can put on the wave ring and a flat washer. After that, we can install the second snap ring. You'll see me tapping on the snap ring to make sure it snaps in the groove, since there's a little bit of tension coming from the wave ring. Since the speed sensor gear is fully installed, we can move up to the primary gear. We will slide a big washer on the shaft first, and then we can install the shaft key. After that we can install the slotted washer. Once those are into place, we can install the primary gear itself. This gear can actually come apart, but I didn't see any reason to do so. But just make sure that the marks on the back line up though. If they are off, even a bit, certain ratios are off as well. Once the gear is into place, we can put the lock washer into place and install the nut. This nut needs to be torqued to 103 foot-pounds. Okay guys, so this is where you want to pay attention, since the first timing item begins here. The balancer gear has a timing mark as well as the primary drive gear. These need to be aligned. If not, the engine will run very rough and with high vibrations, or even worse, the balancer may touch the crankshaft and that can get expensive quickly. When the gear is in place, we need to install a locking washer as well as a lock nut. This one torques to 103 foot-pounds or 140 Nm. The gear is held into place by a shaft key. After assembly, make sure that the dots are still aligned. Spin the crank to confirm the balancer is not hitting the crankshaft. If you remembered, we've talked about the primary gear being a multiple piece item. If it is not together correctly, it could hit the crankshaft even though the marks are aligned on the balancer gear. For holding the crank into place, there are multiple ways to do so. Number one option would be to stick a piece of metal through the connecting rod and let it rest on the block opening. Another method is to stick a soft piece of metal like copper or aluminium strip between the primary gear and the balancer gear. Okay, so now that everything is torqued, we can fold over the tabs. On the primary gear we will use some blue Loctite, just to be sure. And once again we will fold over the tab when everything is torqued to spec. Okay guys, so next up is installing the oil pump. Make sure to inspect this because this is from aluminum and debris can easily score the pump parts. Raptor 660s are very picky when it comes to a lot of things and oil pressure is one of those things, unfortunately. To install the oil pump we need to put the two O-rings in the designated grooves and then we can fit our gasket on the pump. I used assembly loop on the gasket and the O-rings so they don't move around since the oil loop is quite sticky. The pump can only fit one way. There's a recession in the engine where the screw on the pump will fit in. Once the pump is pressed into place, we can install the 3 bolts and tighten them. If you prefer it, go torque them to about 8 foot-pounds or 10 Nm. Always refer to the manual to be sure. Next up is the oil pump gear. The code 3AJ goes upwards. The gear itself can only fit one way. Make sure to install the snap ring as well. Okay, finally we can move on to the fun part, which is installing the clutch basket. We will inspect the fingers on the basket and the mating surfaces to check for wear. Mine shows a little, but I'm okay with that. The teeth on the gear also look okay, so we will lube it up and put it into place. Just play with the gears a bit and it will seat down properly. Now we will move to the other side of the engine, since I forgot to install the shift shaft seal. Luckily it is quite easy to press into place. When installing a seal, always make sure to lube it up so it won't shear. Okay, now we can go back to the clutch side and install a toothed washer. This sets the correct distance of the inner basket versus the outer basket. Once that is slid into place, I can install a locking washer and nuts. I put some Loctite on it to make sure it can't come loose easily. Now comes the fun part, installing the clutch plates. For some reason I feel when doing this, the engine looks way more complete. When installing the clutch plates, I like to put oil on them. And for the correct order of the plates, I refer to the factory manual. Now that all the plates are into place, we can tighten down the nut. If you want to torque it, go to about 68 foot-pounds or 92 Newton meters. Next up is the pressure plate. Check the mating surface, lube it up and make sure that you have a washer on the inside, because this washer is where the pusher arm bearing will ride on. This bearing is a pancake bearing. Make sure to lube it up as well and slide it through the pressure plate. And after that, you can put the pressure plate on the clutch basket, but make sure to line up the marks. Now, I can put in the springs and crisscross tighten the bolts that go through them. After that, I torque them to 8.5 Newton meters or 6.2 foot-pounds. Be careful not to over tighten these, because these will likely break on you. To run them down fairly quickly, I use an impact on the lowest setting. Now we can take a look at the clutch cover. There's a check valve inside. This is just a spring with a ball. Make sure it works correctly. I installed a new seal in the cover. This seal is responsible for sealing around the crankshaft. In the cover there are needle bearings for the pusher rods. On top there is another seal that I replaced. This engine has quite a lot of seals, but luckily most of them come in a bottom end seal kit. Now that we replaced that seal, we can loop up the pusher rod and stick it into place. After that, I can install a special bolt which makes sure the pusher rod stays into place. Now it's time to install the clutch cover. First, we need to put the dial pins back into place. But when doing so, I found out a very strange thing. On one of the dial pin locations, I found out there was some kind of seal. You can see me trying to figure this out, and I eventually was convinced it's a valve seal. I don't know why, but it looks like one of the previous owners thought it was a good idea to put this into the dial pin hole. And I have to actually give some credit, because it fits perfectly. To install the clutch cover, make sure the pusher groove faces towards the back of the engine. This way, the pusher rod can grab onto the grooves on the pusher. Now that we have that out of the way, we can install the gasket. I like to lube it up so I can actually stick it into place. And with just a few taps, the cover popped right onto the engine. And then I've put in all the bolts, ran them down on the lowest setting on the impact, and I torqued them to 8 foot-pounds or 10 Newton meters. There's a sneaky little bolt hiding in the section where the water pump goes. To install the water pump, we need to make sure the O-ring seats properly. Again, some assembly lube. There is a hole on the bottom of the water pump that must face downwards. Now we can install the water pump cover. Here I did use Vaseline since this O-ring likes to keep popping out. To install the cover, we need to install the 3 longer through bolts and the 2 shorter bolts, or to bolt down the cover. And after this, it's time to install the oil filter. A little bit of oil on the O-ring and we can screw the filter on hand tight. Next up is the speed sensor. This reads off the speed sensor gear we installed earlier, which was the top left little one. Once that's sorted, we can install this oil line. This goes from the engine itself to the oil filter housing. 2 banjo bolts with each 2 copper washers will make sure this won't leak. I torque these to 18 Newton meters. And now we're really going into a fast pace and we're ready to install the timing chain. We will put a little bit of lube on a timing chain and drop it into place, and we will put it on the gear on the crankshaft. Next up is the timing chain guide. These two bolts make sure this stays into place. They need to be torqued to 8 foot-pounds or 10 Nm. After that, we can install the retaining clip for the output shaft seal. Also 2 bolts that torque to 8 foot-pounds or 10 Nm. Then it's time to install the output shaft bushing. The recessions go inwards. We will install the gear later since I need to order a new one. Now that we have done that, we can install the Woodruff key and the needle bearing for the starter gear. Note that not every starter gear uses a needle bearing, mine does. To see if the one-way bearing on the starter clutch works like intended, always check before install. Raptor 660s are notorious for having issues with the starter clutch. Then we can slide on the flywheel with the starter gear already on it. To make sure this has a tight fit, we need to install a thick washer and a flywheel nut. We will torque this to 150 Nm or 110 foot-pounds. Let's move to the starter side and install the shaft and gear. Some models use a needle bearing between the shaft and the gear, some don't. This depends on the model year. The small portion of the gear goes inwards. In the casing there are 3 dial pins. 2 of them use O-rings. Since I came short on a dial pin because one of the previous owners installed a valve seal instead, I have one short. I made sure to use the 2 that need these O-rings. Now let's torque this flywheel bolt to spec. And again, make sure that you keep the crankshaft from spinning while tightening this nut. Let's apply the gasket and put on the stator cover. The stator cover has a little starter cover mounted to it. This cover has a dial pin and a gasket. It also houses a bearing for the starter motor. This bearing prevents radial play on the shaft. Inside the opening on the stator cover, we need to install another gear with a shaft and a needle bearing. Before we call this bottom end complete, let's first install the reverse switch and the neutral switch. These both take copper washers. Alright guys, so this was the complete bottom end assembly. And in the next episode, we'll finish the engine by installing the cylinder, timing components and closing everything up. We're getting really close to putting this engine back in the Raptor and I can't wait to hear this thing running. Thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next one.